Welcome back, guys and girls. Today we're talking about slack action, what it is, how it happens, and what you can do to maybe keep yourself out of dangerous situations. The reason we're talking about this is because late last month, new hire CSX conductor Derek Little was thrown from the car he was riding on and unfortunately passed away. And it's a tragic accident that unfortunately happened, and I can't even imagine what his friends and family right now are going through. And I know everybody in the railroad community feels their loss. So before we get off into everything, Joey over at Railroad Talk had Mr. Little's GoFundMe page sent to him, and I wanted to share that with you guys. If you have it in your heart and ability to do so, maybe go donate to help his young wife and their very, very new baby. Maybe help them reach their goal. They're almost there. The last time I looked, I know they would appreciate it immensely during this trying time. So guys, do me a favor, like and subscribe, share this video, comment down below, leave your questions, thoughts, complaints, gripes, whatever you want to do down below. And also check out the description. Got our affiliate links and other cool stuff in there, and jump in our Discord. It's absolutely free. We'd love to hear from you and join our community. So before we can understand what slack action is, we need to understand the components of the train and the cars that come into play to make all of this happen, resulting in what is called slack action. So trains are made up of cars and locomotives. Put them all together and you got trains. Plain and simple. Engines and cars. Every one of these cars and locomotives are attached together by couplers. Well, those couplers are attached to what's called a drawbar. Drawbars are essentially giant pieces of steel with a coupler or a knuckle on the end of it. I'm not going to get too crazy with explanations here, but not all drawbars are the same. Some are a certain length, some have cushioning devices built into them, some are longer than others, some are shorter than others. With that said, every drawbar on a car or a locomotive has some sort of play built into it. And the reason for that is if the drawbars were stiff and had no give, when train forces change going down the rails and there's no give, the trains would just simply derail all over the place. So there's got to be some play built into those. Now that varies again by what type of drawbar or car you're talking about. But for this, just know that there's some play in there. Let's say it's 6 inches worth of play. Not that big of a deal. That's not an exact number. I'm not a carman. Those guys would know more exact numbers on that than I would. But for all intents and purposes of this video, let's just say 6 inches. Now, if you have 6 inches of play on car A, and then you have 6 inches of play on car B, well, when the cars get to moving and the locomotives take off in a direction, they're going to stretch out. So that's a total change of 1 foot in between each car. Now, if the locomotives hit their brakes and everything bunches back up, well, you're going to be reduced by 1 foot. So that's important to notice, because when you look at the gap in between cars, let's say you're hooking up air hoses or something like that, it's important to remember, just because things are stopped doesn't mean things can't keep moving. Your space in between these two pieces of equipment can get reduced very quickly and very tightly and very dangerously if you're not careful in doing things the correct way. So the next piece of information that you need to understand is the amount of force or effort needed to move a certain piece or multiple pieces of equipment. What I mean by that is, let's say you have a locomotive coupled up to one car. The amount of effort or force needed to make that one car move either direction on the tracks is going to be far less than what is going to be needed to, let's say, move 30, 40, 50, 100 plus cars. The more pieces of equipment or weight you have on your train, the more effort it is going to take to make that very last piece of equipment move. And that's important to understand because let's take, for example, a coal train. We're talking 120 cars. We could easily be looking at 18,000 tons. Well, when the locomotive engineer applies power to start moving that train, the amount of effort it takes to move that first car is going to be far less than what it's going to take to move car number 120. And the reason I point this out is because the amount of effort it takes changes by car to car to car as you work yourself towards the very last piece of equipment on that train. By the time that last piece of equipment starts moving, you have an exponentially higher amount of force pulling that last car than you did initially pulling that first car. Well, all that force is instantly translated and transferred to that last car. And if you are hanging on the side of it, riding it, well, now you are now subjected to those same forces. The problem with that is that there's this wonderful thing called gravity. Let's say this is car number 120 on the railroad train, and you are hanging on to the side of this train. Well, because of gravity, gravity's going to try to keep you exactly where you're at. And then all of a sudden, all those forces from the head end are now trying to move this car, and it just takes off. Well, gravity's going to try to keep you where you're at until your body catches up to the same speed of what is now being applied to that very last car. And, well, unfortunately, that also means there's now a lot of forces put onto your body in a very precarious manner of hanging on to a couple of pieces of steel and hoping you go along with that car. And this is where slack action comes into play. Slack action is typically seen when a cut of cars attached to locomotives is being moved around and it is either not on air or air has not been set to the braking mechanism on that cut of cars. So if you're riding this car and you tell your engineer stop or you call out an emergency, well, what's going to happen is that engineer is going to slam on his independent brakes, which is just the brakes on the locomotive. Now, all that play in all the drawbars on all those cars is going to start running out. And what's going to happen is until all that slack in between those drawbars is taken up, these are going to keep moving. Problem is this is going to suddenly stop. Well, again, because of gravity, the car's going to stop. Your body's going to try to keep traveling in its original direction of travel. So there are a few things that you can take into consideration and know to help mitigate this slack action. Now, most engineers are very mindful and careful when they have a conductor or a brakeman or whoever riding on one of their cars. And what they will often do is set some air. If you haven't experienced this, you've probably, unless you're still in training, you've probably actually heard this and you may not know what it is. It is this sound right here. Now that sound is the sound of the brakes being set on the by using the automatic brake system, which sets air to all the brakes that are attached to the train and on air. That's an important sound to hear because now when you're doing these moves and you're hanging on the side of the car, Well, having air set like that actually smooths out the ride. It dampens how much of those train forces are applied to where you're at, whether you're going forwards or backwards. It makes a huge deal, and it is insanely more safe. Another thing that you can do to help mitigate your risk while riding a car is to give shorter car counts. If you're giving shorter car counts, naturally your engineer is going to be moving at a slower speed. Or in some cases, you could just ask them if they could slow it down a little bit if you're not comfortable at that speed. I've done that before, and I have yet to have an engineer that has a problem with that. Every engineer I've worked with would much rather us be safe, nobody get hurt, we all go home, and nobody gets fired. If you're working with an engineer that says, why can't you speed it up? I would probably have a very serious safety brief with them about what you're comfortable doing on the ground and setting the tone for that work or that particular move. Next thing is, and this might make some managers mad, just don't ride at all. Quite personally, I have been through some of these scenarios and have taken some serious hits, and I'm telling you, it's violent and it hurts, and pretty sure just about every conductor out there has walked away at some point with some bruises on their arms and their hands and their forearms. And I'm telling you right now, it is not a pleasant thing to experience. Now, some things to look out for before you ride. And one of those things is weather. If it is cold, rainy, freezing, let's say you have high winds and your visibility sucks, that's probably not a good time to be riding, because all of those factors can hinder your ability to stay on the side of the car and do so safely. Again, sometimes the best and safest and sometimes quickest option is to just walk it in and do whatever you need to do that way. So guys, I hope this helps you guys understand a little bit more about what slack action is and how dangerous it actually can be. Again, I know there's probably some people out there that are saying, hey, just ride the car in, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I prefer not to. I do when I need to, and sometimes it's really the safer and most efficient option, but I only do so when I feel like it's absolutely safe for me to do so, because quite frankly, there's a lot that can go wrong, and I don't like my entire fate being a betting game on whether or not I can hang on to two pieces of metal and one small stirrup to stand on. There's a lot that can go wrong, and it can go wrong in a hurry, and quite honestly, these are big, heavy pieces of metal, and I'm not going to win against them. So again, I hope that helps you guys understand what exactly slack action is and some of the things that come into play that causes that to happen. Guys, be safe out there. Again, if you guys have the ability to do so and find it in your heart, go check out Derek Little's GoFundMe page. We'll see you on the next one. Here we go.